Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. We are so excited for you to be here for another webinar with ArrowHealth Bridge. Today, we're continuing the conversation on referral management in healthcare, speaking about the easy button for referrals, how you can create less friction, build better outcomes, and create more revenue for your organization. I'm joined today by Dave Brodegard, who is the CEO of ArrowHealth Bridge, and Dr. Marc Watkins, who has an illustrious career in healthcare that he's going to be sharing a little bit more about with you. As we talk more about how referrals are one of the most under-leveraged levers in healthcare, not because providers don't want to act, but because the path to action is too hard. Before we dive into what that topic is, Dr. Marc, would you like to give us a little introduction to who you are and what you're up to today?
Yeah, Courtney, thank you for having me. My name is Marc Watkins, former Chief Medical Officer at Kroger and Kroger Health. Was there a little more than a decade in role, and then previously enterprise level leadership healthcare roles, spanning more than 2 decades at this point. Former Navy physician, so served in the United States Navy for almost 6 years.
Wow.
So I've seen healthcare from various angles. And you talked a little bit about referrals, and it's not around the answer isn't necessarily will. It's because the system is too complicated and providers are pressed with time, and they just never close the loop, even so that they're well-meaning to do so, right? So love to sort of unpackage how the easy button can help this group moving forward.
Awesome. And Dave, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Oh, certainly. Dave Brodegard, CEO and head of product at ArrowHealth. It's a pleasure to be on with the two of you for sure. Mark, been able to have known Mark for a while and have really appreciated the time that we've been able to spend together. At ArrowHealth, we're focused very specifically on improving the whole process around referrals, and making sure that the tools work in the provider's best interest to make it as easy as possible to coordinate care from inside the existing workflow. But really excited about the conversation. Look forward to jumping into it.
Well, I'm excited to have you both here today because I think you bring different perspectives in healthcare to the conversation on referrals. And as many of those in our audience know, the referral landscape is very complex. It's fragmented, and it doesn't create a seamless transition for the patient, for a provider who's trying to manage care, or for the vendors that are trying to provide a service or a solution to that provider and that patient. So as we think about what seamless care could actually look like, or what those referrals could look like if they were a little bit more seamless, I'd love to know a little bit more from Dr. Marc about his experience in working on both the clinical and executive side of healthcare. Dr. Marc, what are some of those big day-to-day obstacles that providers face when they're trying to coordinate care and connect their patients to the right solutions or the right systems outside of their clinic?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And this is, I kind of alluded to this during my intro. Well, it's not because of a lack of will. It's because the system is perfectly designed to create these obstacles and barriers. And so one example is, we really thought at an enterprise level, health system level, that central referring, right? Kind of like central referring organizations, meaning you create one location for patients to actually be routed through. We recognize that's a challenge. It doesn't happen. And many providers feel that the loop is never quite closed, even in vertically integrated systems, that they're trying to get their patients, say, upstream to GI or to ENT or to an oncology specialist. Sometimes they feel like, hey, it's a I'm going to call it a black hole, right? You
Yeah.
send the referral out, and you're not sure if the patient receives communication back from that specialist, and you sometimes don't know if that referral loop is closed. You don't have any indication of it being closed, and so you're kind of left a little bit in the lurch. So it becomes a challenge. And again, it's not because of the lack of not trying and not being willing to do so. It's just because it's been way too difficult to get the job done, the task completed.
And sometimes don't you think it's hard to know what programs a patient qualifies for? There's a lot of external resources that go into making that determination, and that can be hard for a provider to navigate when they're in the middle of seeing many patients on a given day.
Right, and I yeah, you bring up something that we probably touched on earlier in earlier conversations. Is most of the electronic health records today have the ability to um, uh, load in what we call benefit eligibility, and that's plan specific, right? So based on my plan, Dave's plan, your plan, and then what they're eligible for, right? You know who's going to need, say, a prior authorization, pre-certification. You know what even down to what medications may be available. Again, I went through a lot there. Many providers in real time don't have capacity during their busy schedule to review all of those elements, right? And so again, you need an easy solution that says, hey, I need to get someone over to oncology, for example. I just need to be able to press the button in my native workflow and just get it done rather than trying to figure out all of those different elements. And I think when Dave begins to unpackage what the easy button looks like in real time, it sort of takes away that friction, and really you're faced with time and a capacity for providers that are already stretched, being asked to do more and more each day with sometimes less resources.
Yeah, I think that really highlights the need to make your solution a lot more accessible to the providers that are referring patients to you. And that's something that often goes overlooked by vendors in this space. And when you think about that, when a referral breaks down and either a patient doesn't follow through because it was on them to follow up on the referral or set up the next steps with the referral, or a follow-up never happens, or something gets lost in translation because a
Right.
fax gets lost or it gets lost in a system. What does that cost a practice, and what does that cost the patient?
I think the obvious answer could be something like you might say loss of revenue, but I'm going to call it brand reputation is at stake. The cost there is high. The brand credibility, the trust that is implied is impacted when these things break down. And in fact, the patient is left in the lurch ultimately, right? Because they're the ones that their care is sometimes uh, delayed, and we know that delays create a tremendous amount of stress and also uh, impact outcomes for patients longitudinally when things are delayed. So there's the human cost, right? There's also brand reputation that's at stake with um, the practices. But then again, there's also in a crowded, busy, I'm going to call it competitive landscape. So where these referrals that are getting slipped through the cracks, they don't happen. And especially if someone in a provider network or a large practice or specialty practice is managing referrals, and we call that referral management. If that referral management isn't able to sort of track down where these things are going awry, you have leakage, and then eventually you have impact on the operations from a financial impact about around revenue to that practice.
Yeah, I think that the revenue impact is obvious for the vendor. If they're not receiving the referral, then the revenue just isn't there for them. So
Right.
as we think about that, Dave, for someone who hasn't really seen what Bridge can do, what does it look like when a provider can refer a patient, check insurance, share data, or kind of just completely trigger that partner workflow, know that that patient is going to seamlessly be referred to the right care solution, whether that's a service provider or a technology vendor, and never have to leave their EHR to do that?
Well, I mean, you've hit on all the points right there. I think it makes all the difference. And I just have to echo I mean, what Doc was saying in terms of physicians have so much they're doing, so much we ask of them, so many things they have to be managing all at once. The objective of the technology has to be put the right tools in their fingertips, right at their fingertips at just the right moment. And inside of the physician workflow, inside of the EHR, the native experience they're used to, having that single button that they know when they click that, the data goes over and they'll know follow-ups, they'll know the status of that patient on the other side, they'll know if there's any additional information needed, et cetera. All of that, again, without ever having to leave the EHR is it's a game changer and it's so valuable. I think at the end of the day, making it easier for the providers to refer and making it easier for the providers to have the information they need at their fingertips. Ultimately, it certainly results in an improved situation for the vendor or whoever's taking care of that patient afterwards. But at the end of the day, it means patient care actually occurs instead of falling through the crack. I saw a really interesting statistic several weeks ago, but upwards of 45% of referrals never result in patient care. I mean, there's a variety of
Wow.
reasons for that, but it's surprising to think of such a large percentage of referrals that a physician has decided is like clinically valuable for a patient just never end up getting anywhere. And that's a huge problem. But making it easier on the physician, making it easier for that clinician to make the clinical determinations necessary and then make sure that care actually happens it's a game changer.
Yeah, that's amazing. And from a vendor perspective, if you are trying to get your solution in front of providers and get them to actually use it, Bridge kind of makes that possible. Why do you think that's such a game changer for them?
I think it goes back to being in the right moment where the decisions are being made. Again, and Doc was mentioning this, but physicians have so many things that they're juggling at any one time, and certainly have the kind of the best interest of the patient in mind. But in the very moment of decision of, oh, should I send this patient out to get care? There are questions that, if answered in the moment, makes things really simple. But if those questions aren't answered, it leads to hesitation and then kind of abandoning that care route. For example, as a physician, if a physician is concerned, man, I don't know, like, is this going to be an undue burden on the patient from a financial standpoint? Do they qualify for this? There's no time to go up and look at different charts and things like that and make sure the patient qualifies. The easy button, that referral button inside of the EHR, when it automatically detects the patient's information, automatically determines, yes, this is a good fit, it kind of takes that hesitation out of the hands of the provider. And the provider just needs to determine, is this clinically relevant for the patient or not, rather than having to go through all of the math to make sure it fits from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, that's very true. And when you think about that, Dr. Mark, from a clinician's standpoint, do you think that builds trust? I know you were talking a lot about like trust in the practice from the patient, but do you think from an adoption standpoint, when a clinician knows that they have visibility into the referral process and it's very easy for them, do you feel like that builds more trust in the relationship with the external partner as well?
Well, absolutely. It closes the loop, right? It really helps that you know that uh, your clinical decision making around should a patient go to a higher level of care is executed seamlessly, right? That it moves in that direction, and that the patient has some comfort that this was taken care of. It doesn't go into a black hole. I think another part of that is if it's happening in real time in their native workflow, that they're not leaving a workflow to do something, it makes all the best sense, right? So I've been around, the gray hair in my beard will tell you I've been around for a while. One of the things that ultimately happens, and a good example is we want teams, and you can all agree that we want clinicians to practice at the top of their license. And secondly, we want a level of high quality care. And sometimes we want to measure these types of things, right? And so anytime that you have to document whether or not a quality indicator has been made and it's not in their native workflow, you're going somewhere else to document that. It's clumsy, clunky, and likely you never do it. And so that's where a lot of effort is put into trying to make sure we stay within the native workflow, making sure that things are happening in real time so that hence if you need this higher level of care, it happens at the point when that clinician has decided it's time to execute this referral, not
Yeah.
days and weeks later.
And operationally, when everything that I hear from hospitals, health systems, and specialty practices right now is that they're trying to do more with less. So when you add, you may have a great solution. You might have a great tool. You might have a great service that you're offering to a patient that's going to enhance care. But when these clinicians are trying to do more with less, they're trying to put more work on their staff's plate, and there's just so many things that they have to manage. I would imagine that being able to say that your tool is easily accessed within the workflow that they're already in, it's going to do all of that heavy lifting for them, and it's not necessarily going to take all of the steps to get the referral pre-authorized and things like that. It very well could, depending on what the solution is, but it takes a lot of that administrative work off of their plate. So on the vendor side, obviously the goal is to see more referrals, but on the provider side, encouraging them to use them by making it seamless, but also reducing their administrative overhead in managing those referrals, I would imagine that would be a pretty big game changer.
Oh, 100%, right? You start thinking about how much of an administrative burden that we have with our healthcare ecosystem today. It increases the cost of care. It doesn't enhance the clinical outcomes because you're spending all this administrative tasks and doing things that aren't part of the traditional care delivery. And so you stress already overwhelmed teams. We've probably kicked the can around this topic a little bit even today in the background. And, we call this one of the leading contributors to burnout with physicians is this administrative burden that you are spending so much time doing non-clinical duties. If there was something easy enough to, and they have many tasks. We're just talking about referrals at this point, but getting a referral like my doctor did for me when I went to see the GI specialist, that was something that was done pretty seamlessly. It was connected within their health system, but it still took extra work for Dr. Miller to get it done, and I appreciate all of its help, but it was extra work even in an integrated health system for this to happen. So a lot of moving pieces and things can fall through the cracks, as Dave mentioned.
And from a patient care standpoint, do you think that it makes a difference when that referral happens immediately? Like, I feel like in today's world where everything's online and communication is nearly instant in most situations, patients really expect that care happens instantaneously. And I know that I personally have, gone through the referral process that's been very manual with my kids or myself. And it's very frustrating because you kind of like, once you're in that mode of, I'm ready to figure out the next steps for this problem, you just kind of want to work on it and get those next steps scheduled. And when it takes 2 or 3 or 4 days, or sometimes even longer, to get that referral, that can be very frustrating. I've seen studies from the AMA that show that that can actually increase abandonment of care as well. Do you think, though, from a patient experience, that they're, one, more likely to pursue care, and two, more likely to be satisfied with their provider and the end service or solution that they're being referred to when that care is seamless?
And this is not to poke fun or make a joke, but if you're at a restaurant and you ordered the soup of the day and it showed up 20 minutes after you ordered it and it was cold, that's just disappointing, right? You're not going to be happy with the soup, or you're not going to be happy with your experience. If and here's the serious part. When a provider makes a referral for whatever it may be, higher level of care, maybe it's a some type of diagnostic, and it doesn't happen. There's those. I spoke about delays, right? And then also, the patient may feel that if it's delayed, it's not important. I don't need to do this, right? It's not something I really need to get done because, we made this appointment or referral, and I don't still have an appointment or a time when I'm going to see this specialist. So maybe it's really not as important as doc said it was, or the provider said it was.
Yeah, I can see how that would happen.
Your example with the soup, doc, makes perfect sense. I think there's almost, from a patient perspective, with things like Amazon or online shopping or whatever else, there's in the pure kind of direct to consumer world, there's an expectation of, once I click order, then I can kind of see where that's at. I know when it's going to arrive. I know it's on the
Right.
truck right now, and that sort of thing. There's this expectation, and you almost kind of come into this with that assumption. And the unfortunate reality right now is just healthcare is not quite there. But it it can be. There's no reason not to. The technology certainly exists, but I think to bring that level of connectivity to the referral flow, I mean, it requires a couple things. You have to be inside of the EHR. You can't have something awesome, but you just have to leave your workflow to get to it. That doesn't work. I mean, just like Dr. Mark was saying, like, if it requires the physician or any other member of the care team to deviate from their normal workflow, odds are with a packed clinic, it's just not going to get done in a timely fashion. And that's not because people don't have the best intentions. That's just reality of what's going on in a busy clinic. But if you can make the easier workflow, the easier process baked into the existing workflow that a clinical team is used to, that's where you can start making a big difference.
Mhm. And referrals are competitive. Like I don't think that we can understate how competitive the referral process can be for different providers and vendors and specialty groups. And if you want to capture more referrals, you really need to be intentional about the process that you're creating for both the provider and the patient, and use it as a differentiator. So I believe that the ArrowHealth solution is a differentiator for most of the vendors that it's serving, but it's also a differentiator for a provider when they can say, we have this solution. I'm sending this. It's kind of like when you get a prescription and they can, I remember when I was a kid, they would hand you the paper. You would have to go to the clinic or to the pharmacy. You give it to the pharmacist. Then you come back an hour later. And now it's seamless. You click a button and that prescription is sent to your pharmacy of choice. It's very similar to that. In that this creates this seamless referral. They click, it's done, and you don't even have to think about it. You know that those next steps are already in action. So it's almost a differentiator for the provider as well to retain patients because their experience is so much better than others that they're competing against.
Yeah, and quite frankly, Courtney, you clicked on something that's really interesting. A competitive marketplace, right? Um, you know, you want to keep your clinical teams busy, but busy on good work, right? I was reading in just an article that uh, you know administrative burden in the United States health system. It's estimated that it's about $1 trillion annually, right? So, it's a ridiculous amount of waste in the system, meaning that we're spending so much time on administrative tasks rather than caring for patients, and that can be frustrating for all providers. And so I think if we're able to increase efficiency and directionality of, hey, I need this patient to go to, I recommend they go here or wherever this provider wants to send them. Let's figure out how to get them there seamlessly. really, and don't put any more burden on already taxed clinical staff, right? Or put any more burden on the patient, him or herself, right? Dave made the reference to Amazon. Um, they're trying to make that whole end-to-end experience as seamless as possible, and so that you come back again and again, right? So you want this to be easy, and you want to be able to elevate your practice as the practice of choice in a community or wherever you are. And if you had it as easy as possible for the teams, why not?
Yeah, I totally agree. And kind of coming back to Dave's point on being in the EHR. So there are so many EHRs that exist, right? There's the big ones, but then you also have all of the specialty practice EHRs, and that landscape is vast. There's a lot of different options that exist out there. Most vendors, when I speak to them, are really only thinking about one or two EHRs that they need to show up in. Dave, can you talk? I know we've talked about this offline a little bit, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about the value of having a solution that can be visible in any EHR.
For sure. There's I think kind of framing that to our clients, the kind of vendors that are providing services and receiving referrals and things like that. Um, Unfortunately, the kind of current landscape for integration and interoperability means that they have to essentially pick one or two EHRs and just stick with those. And that's kind of that's as much as they can take on because of the costs and complexities of deep integrations with each EHR. So they'll pick one or two. And to the EHR vendors who they select, they're happy with that. That's great. But the reality is our objective and our client's objective is to serve as many physicians and patients as possible across the range of EHRs that exist out there, which is where our solution comes in as we look to be EHR agnostic and be able to provide the exact same level of experience to a referring provider, whether they're on one of the big EHRs or whether they're on a smaller, more niche EHR. It's the exact same experience across the board, which means our vendors, our clients can offer their services to physicians everywhere, as opposed to just physicians that are running a certain tech stack in a certain region and things like that. And going back to just the concept, I think any solution to really have an impact needs to be ubiquitous. It needs to be easy to access across the board rather than just, oh, it works great as long as you're running a specific tech stack or something like that. It's got to be available to everyone. And that's where we come in.
I love that. What types of solutions are a really great fit for the easy button?
Yeah. I honestly, anywhere, any organizations that would like to receive more referrals from physicians. One of our clients was on kind of an old school fax referral process. And they had great relationships with their referring physicians, and that was fantastic. Uh, and based on kind of prior to working with us, based on their historical volumes, they thought they were doing pretty good at the clinics that were referring to them. Once they started utilizing the easy button, they were shocked to see how many eligible, qualified patients their referring physicians were seeing every single day
Yeah.
that they just had no idea about. And the reason for it is previously, when they were just kind of on a fax referral flow, they were out of sight, out of mind to a busy physician. Um, and again, with all the best intentions on their referring partner's side. But if they're out of sight, out of mind, then it's like the utilization is quite a bit lower. With the easy button, they are now present on every single patient chart, and the easy button itself can nudge the provider to let the provider know, hey, this patient checks all the boxes. They may be a good candidate here. And the provider can just with a single click, send that information over. Taking away that hesitation or eliminating that hesitation really empowers the physician to make the best clinical decision for the patient in the moment. And what they see is once they're embedded in the workflow, utilization increases significantly. And it's just such an eye-opening moment of like, wait, hang on. Our providers are seeing a lot of patients that qualify quite a bit more than they were seeing previously.
I think all of what you said is very interesting, but one of the things that always stands out to me whenever we talk about this is the fact that we are still sending referrals over fax, just like we're still sending prior authorizations over fax, although that is changing. Dr. Mark, I have to ask, this is kind of a wild card question, but what percentage of referrals do you think are still sent by fax today?
I would say the vast majority. It's unfortunate if there's not that degree of integration with the native workflow, your backup is fax, right? So unfortunately, that's likely still happening. And let me just maybe just speak to that just a little bit. That's a challenge, right? That there could be incomplete information. Incomplete information sometimes delays care, the specialist not having accurate documentation. It produces more cost and less efficiency, right? Sometimes tests become redundant if they're not caught in the electronic health record. And so there's just opportunities for missteps along the way with using the fax machine and not having it really integrated with your native workflow.
I can see how care gets missed when we rely on fax. Although, as we talked to Brendan Keeler a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago at this point, and he mentioned that we really can't be too negative about the fax, because at the time that the fax became part of the healthcare ecosystem of communication, it was really innovative, and it's just not as innovative today as it was 20 years ago. We talked a little bit about administrative burden, and I think it would be interesting to know, what is the administrative burden to a care team that is sending referrals through a solution that's enabled by the easy button, Dave?
So and this goes back to what Doc was saying, but the objective is to eliminate almost all administrative burden. You want it to be as seamless as possible. There are some things that humans are good at, and there are some things that the system is good at. And the objective is, let the humans do the things that only the human can do. Let the physician do the actual patient work. Let's let the system take care of all the things that it can do. So the easy button essentially does that. Like it will interface and look into the patient chart and provide the physician with that one-click experience to send a referral. And then when that data comes in on the receiving side, that data flows directly into the platform of their choice, the platform they use to complete intake and things like that. And then the humans on the receiving end are doing the things that the humans are best at, and that is actually working with the patient, actually talking to them, making sure the patient experience is just right, rather than managing spreadsheets or checking a fax machine or making sure the eFax is connected right. The data just flows and lets humans do what humans do best, and lets the machines do what they do best. So at the end of the day, we want to reduce that administrative burden to absolute minimum.
And final question for both of you, and it might be a little bit of a curveball because it was not in our pre-approved list of questions, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. When you imagine what care delivery looks like and referral management looks like in 10 years, if you look into your crystal ball, what do you see in the future?
Well, if I had a crystal ball and what would this look like in the future? It would be more efficient. It would save time and money to the system, and we would have ultimately less delays in healthcare delivery. And with less delays, we would then have better outcomes. So that would be the future, that you would have things in place that just made it a lot easier to negotiate and reduce all of this administrative burden. And then finally, the last point around that is Dave mentioned, how do you keep people engaged? And so that pressing the top of their license, you have doctors doing things that doctors do. How do we reduce burnout, right? How do we keep these teams involved in the care delivery that they've trained to do for so many years? So that would be my crystal ball.
I tell you, Dr. Watkins' view of this is certainly more informed than my own. But I just have to echo. I feel like that seems spot on. In the next 10, 20 years, I think maybe different than a common projection that we see. I think there's a big push right now to remove humans from the process wherever possible. And that makes perfect sense, because the idea is like, let's remove the human element and human mistakes and just make it super smooth. I actually feel like that's not quite where we should go, and not quite where we will go. I think at the end of the day, in 10, 20 years, I think we'll see humans, just their portion of it being optimized. Like, at the end of the day, I don't want to be treated by a robot. I want to be treated by a human. I want to talk to a human on the phone. But let's let humans do that kind of top of their license that Dr. Watkins talking about, and then wick away all the administrative stuff. So I see in the future this type of data exchange and care coordination, way more transparency, every member of the care team being fully in the loop, and things happening instantly, that a provider can see, up to the minute exactly what's happening to the patient. But at the end of the day, the provider's still in charge. The provider's still fully aware and managing that care. And on the kind of referring side, the clinicians that are receiving that referral, that they have perfect visibility into what the referring provider is intending to have happen. And that conversation between the two, where it needs to happen, is human to human. That it just makes perfect sense. That it's just easy. So I think increased transparency, certainly reduced delays, just like Dr. Mark was saying, and just everything happening quite a bit faster. I do see that happening, but I think the future is human, and the better our technology gets, we let the humans do what they do best, in actually delivering the care.
I could not agree more. As we like to say, AI cannot live in a bubble, and technology cannot live in a bubble on its own either. You really do need to balance the human and technology elements to make the entire system really successful. This was excellent. I'm excited that we had a chance to chat through this. I know we've talked a little bit in the past about these topics as well, but to be able to host a webinar and have both of you here was wonderful. We are dropping a link if you'd like to schedule a demo with ArrowHealth to learn more about the easy button. That is available in the comments to the right, or to the left of the screen, right for me, but maybe left for you. And we have also added Dr. Mark's contact information, his LinkedIn page, and Dave's LinkedIn page in the comments as well. Please feel free to connect with them on LinkedIn and drop them a note if you enjoyed this conversation today. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.